What if you could find work that was meaningful, but didn't come with a standard toxic corporate workplace culture? At Palmtree, we think we have exactly that, and our colleagues would agree. We're a consulting firm focused on the world of private equity and M&A. We do good work, and we're proud of that, but we also invest heavily into building a people-first culture. The investment in our people has resulted in high retention numbers across the firm since we started in 2010. If accounting, strategy, analytics, banking, and working with the world's smartest and kindest people sounds like the kind of work you'd enjoy, consider applying for a role at Palmtree. Visit our careers page at palmtreellc.com or find the link in this episode's show notes for more information.
Strategy Simplified, welcome back to another episode. This is Japheth, your producer. Really looking forward to sharing today's episode with you. It's an amazing panel discussion with 7 leading strategy consulting firms, including Strategy & KPMG, Simon-Kucher, and more. It's a really great conversation where you're going to learn about the state of the strategy consulting industry right now, learn which firms are hiring and where, which areas inside the industry are growing, which are not, what firms are thinking about, what firms are looking at, and more. There's a link in this episode's show notes. You can see current openings at each of these 7 firms. You can see the jobs there. You can see what's happening, connect with the firms, follow them, reach out. A lot of really great stuff. In addition, you'll find the video version of this podcast as well on that same link. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into this strategy consulting panel.
I am really excited to be with everyone today. Thank you to all of our panelists for joining. We'll run the session in 4 different parts. So we'll begin with some panelist intros and a response to an opening question. I'll read that in just a second. Panelists, I'll call on each one of you as we go through that. Then we have some moderator curated questions, the questions that we're hearing with our ear to the ground, that candidates are asking, that other firms are trying to figure out. So we're looking forward to hearing that. The third piece is audience questions that you've pre-submitted. Thank you to our audience for pre-submitting some of your pressing questions as well. And at the end, we will do some closing questions. With that, I'm going to kick off with the panelists. So panelists, again, welcome. Advancy, we'd love for you to go first. If you could please introduce yourself, your firm, the firm's special sauce, and also whether or not you hire international students. That would be a great way to start today.
Hi everyone, I'm Kim. I'm a senior manager at Advancy. I've been there for 6 years now, first 3 years in the French office and then 3 years in New York. So I don't know if you're familiar with Advancy, but it's indeed a French company. It's headquartered in Paris, and we recently, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, opened a branch in the US. What we do is mainly strategy consulting and advising both corporate clients and private equity firms. I would say it's maybe half-half between corporate strategy and rest advising sell side or buy side for, private equity firms wanting to acquire specific targets in 2 main industries. First would be the chemical industry, and second would be really everything related to healthcare, biotech. That would be the 2 main really industries we're working on. Last one, it's a bit smaller, but it's also growing very fast for us. It's everything related to food ingredients. So whatever you can find in some cupcakes or, Coca-Cola sodas, etc. We would be working on those specialty ingredients as well. So happy to meet you all today and waiting forward for your questions.
We're so excited to have you, Kim. I had the chance to visit the office for Advancing in New York. It was really fun. Quick question for you. What about international student hiring?
Sure. International. So obviously we're very international. First, I come from Paris. There are other people from Paris. And in terms of hiring, we do hire a lot of international students. We do provide some visa as well. When we see a really good fit for a candidate, that's something that we definitely do.
Lovely. Can't wait to hear more from you today. Thanks again for joining. Okay, Louisa Altman-Solon.
Hi, yes, excited to be here. My name is Louisa. I'm a manager here at Altman-Solon in our Los Angeles office. I joined the firm 8 years ago out of undergrad, and then left for a couple years to go to MIT for business school and have been back for a couple years since then. To introduce the firm a little bit, Altman-Solon's a global consulting firm, about 600 people between the US, the EU, and then some small newer offices in APAC. And we do TMT strategy. So that is tech, media, and telecom. I really enjoy working in those industries. I think they're super interesting, growing super quickly. And it's a great opportunity to get a little bit specialized and go deep early in your career. Our sort of strategy portfolio includes, I think, sort of similar to Advancy, about 40% commercial due diligence for private equity firms, and then the rest is corporate strategy. Again, all in that TMT bucket. We're also pretty quantitative, so I would think of us as probably a little bit more sort of data and analytics focused than your average firm. And I know you asked about special sauce. I'll give a pitch for our people and culture there as well. Happy to share more about that. Then lastly, on the sponsorship question, we do hire international students, including those who need sponsorship on a case-by-case basis.
Amazing. Stunning. Thank you. Welcome. We're glad to have you and can't wait to hear more. KPMG, Palmer.
Hi, welcome. Palmer Mayer. I've been with KPMG for almost 19 years. I was hired as a campus hire into our advisory practice on the risk consulting side and moved into recruiting. I lead our advisory recruiting, which is encompass strategy consulting for the US. Do work closely with our colleagues internationally, but mainly focused within US hiring. Our special sauce is we are one of the big four accounting consulting firms. And so we have resources and staffs and able to work across tax consulting when doing large strategy consulting projects. So it allows HR, back office specialty, which really does sell to our clients. M&A work, corporate finance, big transformations is really the special sauce of what KPMG strategy does. As far as international, from a campus perspective, we do not sponsor into strategy consulting. However, when you get into experienced hire, if there's a special skill set that's needed, then there could be a requisition opened that will sponsor. And then we also have our member firms. So there could be opportunities for you to go work in one of our member countries and apply there.
Palmer, I think we need to do just like a whole dictionary of KPMG session at some point where everybody can understand like the lay of the land. It would be helpful for everyone, I think, to get it. But thank you for that.
Yeah.
Stunning. Thank you. We're glad to have you and excited to hear your perspective on what's going on in the industry. It's going to be great.
Okay.
Awesome. OC&C, Naomi.
Great. Hello. Thank you everyone so much for having me. I'm Naomi. I'm an associate partner at OC&C in our technology and media practice. As you might have guessed, I started my career in the London office, which I joined after completing my undergrad at the University of Oxford. But I've been out here in New York now for 5 years. In terms of who OC&C is, we are a boutique firm where we really focus on the technology and media, retail and leisure, consumer goods, and B2B services industries. And about 70% of our work is pure strategy and 30% is, sell side and buy side diligence for private equity. In terms of the kind of special sauce that we bring to our clients, it's that we really know what we do backwards and forwards. We are genuinely, some of the very best at the topics that we go really deep in. But then the special sauce that we bring to our employees is that we are an international firm with 700, 800 people globally across London and Shanghai and Sydney and New York. But in the US, we're an office of about 100 people. And it means you really do know everyone. You really do invest in other people, both in terms of coaching. You know you're going to work with people again and again. And so you actually spend a lot of time getting to know one another. And it does also translate into making some very nice friends. I've been to weddings, I've been to vacations. It's just makes working here so much more pleasant when you actually enjoy the company of the people you work with. And yes, in terms of international, we absolutely do. I think actually we've had 15 interns start in the last week, and about 30% of them are international. We can sponsor visas out of university for anyone with a STEM extension. And we can also sponsor visas for people who have citizenship of, see if I get this list right, I believe it's Mexico, Singapore, Canada, Australia, and Chile. That's our recruitment officer in the background. Just
I was gonna say, the voice from above, yeah.
And Chile. But yeah, as you can tell by my accent, we're certainly very welcoming to international people.
Stunning. Thank you so much. We're really excited to have you and your perspective today. I've also been to the OCNC New York office and really enjoy it. Precision, Eddie.
Yep. Thanks, Jenny Ray. Hi, everyone. Eddie Vogel. I'm a senior director with Precision. I've been with the firm for about 7.5 years now, working remotely out of our co-working space at my house with my wife and my 3-year-old in Westchester, Pennsylvania. We do have an optional work from home model. We have offices globally. I'm aligned to our New York office technically, but work from home pretty much fully. Before coming to consulting, I was in academia. I got my PhD in biomedical engineering at Columbia. I was doing kind of traditional wet lab research, and then got the consulting bug by doing some work with our technology transfer office and haven't really looked back since. And a little bit more background on Precision as a whole. We're a global pricing and market access strategic consultancy. We're supporting pharmaceutical biotechnology clients on a range of business challenges that they might be facing, kind of that spans the entire drug development spectrum, whether it's preclinical, they're trying to evaluate early stage opportunities to acquire, and or things that are in-house potentially trying to assess the opportunities there, all the way through to launch planning and even through to loss of exclusivity strategy. So our special sauce, I would say, is it kind of works internally, but I think it kind of gets pulled through to our clients is through our apprenticeship model that we employ internally. So we're really focused on training and developing our junior teams, exposing them to a lot of deep content and making sure that they're kind of following along and getting the mentorship and coaching that they need so they can rapidly grow from content experts into our future project managers and leads. I think what this does then for our clients, allowing us to kind of better support them, is it really allows us to bring this deep content expertise across the entire team. And it just elevates the level of quality of work that we're generating for our clients. So we can really be that thought partner that they're looking for on their key pricing and market access challenges. From an international hire standpoint, I'm going to follow some of my colleagues here and say yes on the international hire front. It is more on that kind of case-by-case basis, based on fit. And I know there's some HR limitations that they'd be better equipped to speak to, but the advice I've been given by HR was encourage the application for sure.
Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Eddie, by the way, mentioned technology transfer offices. Just as a quick aside for everyone on the call, if you don't know what those are, but you're in university, that's where a lot of the hotbed of innovation for something that's been created at a university is headed toward commercialization, and can be awesome places to do free or paid consulting projects within your TTO. So if you haven't investigated that as an option, especially if you're kind of an early undergrad, freshman, sophomore, that can be a really great place to start to get interested in these types of things and verify, like you mentioned, Eddie, your interest. So looking forward to hearing more from you. Awesome. Simon-Kucher, Stephen.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Great to see so many people here. So my name is Stephen Dunbar. I'm a partner, obviously, as you can see on my screen, with Simon-Kucher. I started actually 12 years ago in our Boston office at the entry level coming out of university. I was in our Boston office for 6 years before moving out to Chicago to actually start our Chicago office. And then I joined the partnership at the beginning of 2021. So I'm in my 4th year as a partner with the firm. I mainly focus on our healthcare and life sciences business, probably doing very similar work actually to Eddie. But that's my focus. But as a firm, we actually work in a number of industries. So a little bit about the firm. So Simon-Kucher is about a 40-year-old firm, originally founded in Germany. Since then, we've grown to a global firm of over 2,000 individuals across lost count even of the number of countries at this point, with I think over 40 offices globally. We focus really on what we call growth strategy. So our focus really is on on helping our clients to grow their businesses from a revenue perspective. And so we don't do any sort of cost-cutting work or anything like that. And we focus on, I would say, 5 key industries. The first being healthcare and life sciences. Then the second being B2B industrials. Third, software, internet, and media. Fourth, consumer goods, and 5th, financial services. So those are our main industry areas. In terms of some unique part about us, we are a global firm. We take a lot of pride in that. We do also a lot of our work is global. So a lot of times we're working on global teams, working with people in other countries, regularly interacting on a global scale. And then in terms of the international piece or international sponsorship, so we definitely have a number of individuals within our firm from other countries in the U.S. We do sponsor specifically at the MBA and PhD level. Given the realities of the sponsorship process, we do not sponsor at the undergraduate and general master's level.
Super helpful. Stephen, excited to hear more from you today. I probably should have asked this of everybody. I'll go back to the ones I haven't yet, but are y'all hiring now? Do you have a hiring freeze? Have you completely stopped hiring? Are you deferring everybody, or are you hiring? I think that's one of the questions that a lot of people are trying to figure out.
So we are currently hiring, I would say, for select experience positions as well as internships. We're at the moment, I do not believe that we are hiring for full-time kind of starting out of school.
Great. Helpful. Thank you. Awesome. Look forward to hearing a little bit more from you as well. Okay. And then last but not least, strategy and Paul.
Awesome. It's great to hear everybody's experience on this panel. Paul Leinwand, based out of Chicago. I've been doing consulting for a long time, strategy consulting, originally with Booz Allen and Booz & Company. Also a professor at Kellogg. So for anybody that's interested in higher education, I really encourage it still. I have been really fortunate in my career to get some amazing experiences doing strategy consulting work, but also a ton of research with Harvard. So we've published 4 books on strategy and leadership. The last book, Beyond Digital, which really looked at all the issues that we're facing today. Just to give you a sense of some of the work, I'll just give you some examples because I think that brings it to life better than sort of broad topics. In the last year, working on vaccines for really spots where companies are not economically interested in bringing a vaccine, but foundations, as we all know, are, and we tend to support a lot of that work, which is really fantastic. So that's kind of one example, and thinking about how to create a market for vaccines when a market doesn't exist. The second example is with hospitals. Hospitals are all trying to become a little bit more consumer-oriented rather than patient-oriented. And so we've done a lot of strategy work with a lot of hospital systems to think about what does their future look like in that kind of consumer-oriented environment. And then with a consumer packaged goods company, one of the largest global ones, rethinking their entire operating model. How do they go to market? How do they grow? What are the big opportunities for them? So some really exciting work, and I think that's what's great about this space is there is so much opportunity. What makes us unique? We're a really big strategy firm with a lot of scale, but also within PwC, which offers all kinds of opportunities to work on super interesting topics where strategy connects to lots of other things. The depth that we have right now on AI, we're doing some research on AI and how use cases are emerging inside of companies. And then what's the strategy for why AI should be used or not? So this combination of a strategy firm with an incredible professional services organization really works well. We have offices all over the world. Because I teach, I am kind of prohibited from being involved in the recruiting process. So I'm going to refer you to our website, whether we're hiring, but absolutely there is hiring that goes on globally in lots of our different offices.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. So excited to have you. I mean, basically, I think what we are saying is that Japheth really pulled together a panel of underachievers, right? Like, we've got professors and PhDs, and y'all are incredibly impressive. So I can't wait to hear some more of your perspective. As we're about to dive in, there are some questions that are coming in the chat. So panelists, if you want to respond to those, that's great. And if not, you can refer folks to places where people can go. But also, maybe more specifically, if you have a hot take on something, please let us know. So if you're kind of like, hey, international students do this, or where I would apply if I were you right now, Dubai, or right, if they're, this is the area that I would focus on. This is a skill that I'm seeing we're really interested in right now. Like if you have hot takes, I think that can often help to cut through some of the noise inside there. So I'll invite you to do that in the chat as we move into our further discussion. Great, we'll move on to part 2, which are moderator curated questions. For each of these, I've selected just a few people to respond to them. And then at the end, if there's something that you really wanted to weigh in on that you didn't get to do, I'll give you an opportunity to do that. So question number 1 is just, everybody says we do strategy, and you all kind of explained a little bit about maybe industry or topic areas, but really breaking down what strategy consultants actually do is powerful and a question for the ages. So can you just talk a little bit about what it is exactly? Is it whiteboards and brainstorming meetings? Is it something else? And maybe if you want to do a compare contrast with like, it's not this is what people do in a different sector, but it is this, that's also helpful. Stephen, Simon-Kucher, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. So how I would describe it. So I mean, ultimately, when it comes to strategy consulting, the idea is to provide some sort of direction for the company on a path forward, right? So usually what it entails is usually there is some sort of overarching business question that the client has, or that they're trying to get an answer to, that they're trying to define a path forward for. Usually there's a mix of some level of research, and this can be a mix of primary, secondary, or even just expertise or prior work. And then that research or knowledge base is then used to make a decision or inform how the company should best go about the answering or dealing with the question that they have. So in a very simple example that's near and dear to a lot of what Simon-Kucher does, there's a lot of questions often about on how to, for example, price a particular offering that the client has. So if you're thinking about, I'll take a non-healthcare and life sciences example. Let's talk about in software, right? You've got many different software configurations, different packages that consumers can purchase, right? And there's a fundamental question of what packages should you offer those consumers and how should you price them, right? So you're going to they would come to us, we would do some competitor benchmarking, industry benchmarking, primary research, secondary research, et cetera. And we would basically come to them and say, okay, we recommend that you launch with package A, B, and C, and this is how you price each one of these, and these are the customers you go to for each of those, and set the overall direction that then the client actually executes.
Amazing. Good insight. Thanks. Strategy and Paul, can you weigh in on that? What is strategy consulting actually?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a vague term, and for anybody that's been in it, you always get that question from friends like, what do you do? With a bit of a difficult answer sometimes.
Paul, it's in your name. You got to know this, right? This is something that you have to be an expert on.
I mean, strategy is really such an important topic that in my kind of view and in our view, it's like answering the most important decisions that the CEO and the board have to make that's going to create incredible amounts of value, or if made wrong, really could detract from the value of an organization. There was a great study that we did, a few years back where we looked at like value creation and loss. And if you look at the loss side, like the world's greatest losers, not to reference any kind of TV reality show, something like 90+ percentage points of all of the loss are strategic decisions, right? So we're talking about, should we enter a market? Should we rethink the way we operate in terms of the supply chain that we have? Should we acquire the next organization? Should we merge? Should we sell ourselves? These are the big strategic questions, and strategy is there to provide the logic for why that might be a good path or might not be a good path. And I really liked the last discussion a little bit, because often clients come to us with specific questions. We have to spend some time thinking about, are these even the right questions that should be answered, right? Sometimes it's, hey, this business is falling apart. What's going on? That may not be the real issue. The real issue may be that business isn't in the right portfolio, right? So we work with CEOs and boards to think about, are we answering the right question? And then what's the right way to think about that answer? And how do we do the work to get you there?
Love it. Solid. Louisa Altman-Solon, what about you?
Great. Yeah. So I think I think these are all right. Totally agree. Let me tell you a little bit about what my team is working on right now, and then like literally what my team is doing today. So currently working on a operations strategy project for a fiber company. So this is basically a company that used to provide like home phone service in the US, and now they mostly sell fiber internet to people's homes. And they're having sort of a range of operational challenges, and they asked us to come in and take a look at the whole business and figure out where we should spend some time to try to make a step function in their operations. So we identified like 6 different work streams. They're actually on a whiteboard right next to me right now, where we said, these are the things where we're gonna, invest the time, assign someone, and really try to make some changes. So one of the things we're thinking about a lot right now is their field operations. They need to build fiber and then install it. And that has a bunch of challenges because the trucks and the people need to be in the right place at the right time when the sales come. Another thing we're working on is how do they sell into apartment buildings and what they call like MDUs, like multi-dwelling units. Like what strategy do you need to approach that customer from a sales, pricing, et cetera perspective? So sort of a whole list of things like that we're working on. That's what we'll spend the next couple months on. Literally today, what my team is doing is we had a meeting this morning with partners. We do that pretty much every day, where we say, hey, here's our plan for the day. I lead the day-to-day team, and then I've got 6 people who also work on the team with me. So we said, here's our plan. Here's the 3 things we need your advice on or your input on, or we need you to look at. And then right now, basically what happens is for a couple hours in the middle of the day, usually people are working on either analysis, slides. People tend to sort of like go back to their desk, do some independent work for the most part. This afternoon, people will share things with me. I'll sort of meet with all those different work streams independently, provide my guidance. And then later this afternoon, we have a client meeting for the field operations work stream. And I think that's, a pretty standard day. We'll get to the end of the day. We'll have some new slides that we'll ask the partners to review overnight. And we'll do the same thing again tomorrow.
Amazing. So it is whiteboards, but not only whiteboards. That's what you're saying,
yes,
right?
100%.
Love it. I love strategy consulting because of the big questions. It almost feels like you're in a sacred space with an organization trying to figure out how to determine the future. And I don't think anybody really clearly articulated that to me when I was going into it. Like audit is looking backwards, right? And strategy is looking forwards. And I think that's part of what is so exciting about it, because there's no right answers. You're really trying to shape it in a very fast changing world.
Heads up, consulting candidates. This is Japheth quickly popping in here to let you know what I'm sure you are already aware of, but application deadlines for McKinsey, Bain, and BCG are coming up soon for undergraduate and specialty master's students. Specifically, Bain's first deadline is July 7th, BCG's July 17th, and McKinsey's August 8th. Find all the deadlines at the link in this episode's show notes, but highly recommend making sure your resume is highlighting your best attributes. If you'd like to work with our team on some custom resume edits, or if you need resume edits and case prep help, look into Black Belt. More info at the links in this episode's show notes. We'd love to help you put your best foot forward come application time. All right, let's get back into the show.
Amazing. Let's move to question 2. So how can candidates identify if they're a good fit for strategy consulting versus other types of consulting? So Naomi, OC&C, if you'll weigh in on that one, that'd be great.
Sure. And I'll also actually just circle back to the question around, are we hiring? Yes, we definitely are. So in our office in the US of about 100 people, we've just had 15 interns start. We've got 25 full-time new joiners coming in the next few months. Recruitment for 2025 starting will be underway soon. Just hired 2 new partners. Like, we're hiring at every level. So please do apply. In terms of what makes you a good fit for strategy consulting as opposed to other consulting, I'll be candid that I've never done consulting other than strategy consulting. So this is all based on biases that I have towards strategy. But what really appealed about it to me was that it was really focused on the big questions. As Paul was saying, strategy is the stuff that really, really matters. And so it means that you're spending, let's say, 6 weeks working really closely with a CEO or a chief strategy officer or a chief commercial officer saying, what should we be? What should we be selling? Who is it that we should be selling it to? Things that are really fundamental to a business. It does mean that you don't kind of see it through all the way to the end. We don't do, year-long implementation projects where you're like bunkered down on client site for 4 days a week and you really kind of embed yourself in the client team. Instead, it's much more focused on, we come in, we design something that can be transformational, and then you kind of hand the reins over to the client, and then the senior team are the people that keep in touch and continue to offer advice and continue to do further projects with them to make sure that that strategy is exactly what it is that they need. The reason that appealed for me is my attention span, I think, is suited to a 6-week project rather than to a year-long one. I wanted to get exposure to as many different industries, as many different teams, as many different clients as possible, so that I could learn as much as possible. It means that every 6 weeks you're facing a truly fresh challenge, and it means that every 6 weeks you are in a role that is a little bit more interesting and a little bit more difficult than the one you did before. I think OC&C is very good at making people kind of comfortably uncomfortable. You're constantly being pushed a little bit further with each project, but you do always have that support network of your managers and your mentors around you who have done that work a million times and can give you the guidance and the coaching that you need. So yeah, for me, that's why it was that strategy consulting was the right fit, rather than any other kind.
Love it. Palmer, KPMG, how do candidates identify whether they're a good fit?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the hiring question first. We are hiring. We have actually, I get the updates when a new partner in MD has hired, and we have had several in the last few weeks that have started with the firm. So that's always a good sign that business is doing well. We also plan to have positions for undergrad and MBA in the fall. Right now, we're looking at end of August, early September is when we would have those positions available. We have found over the years, we've done a mix. In our strategy, we've done just MBAs, we've done just undergrad, and we have found the perfect balance is a little bit of both. And so that is our plan for this fall, is to look for both levels. From an MBA perspective, you're going to come in. I saw a question about somebody with 9 years of experience, so I'll address that here. You would come in as a senior associate and within our firm, and they're really looking for someone with 5 to 7 years, so not the 3 years. They want you to have experience. Good background would be having M&A experience already, working in consulting, doing any consulting work, or if you might have a specific just overall business knowledge that that we need within the strategy group. And then to answer your questions, the difference between if you're a good strategy or if you're a good consultant, regular consulting, I think the more experienced you are, the better you're going to know what you're going to be. If you're an undergrad coming out, a lot of the skill sets that we look for in strategy, we look for in consulting as well, like being critical thinking, having intellectual horsepower, being able to be presentable in front of a client. That's true regardless of which group you're going into. So I think it's hard to give that guidance for entry level. As you develop and get experience, you will be able to know what gets you excited. Do you want to be actually be doing the implementations of a transformation and getting nitty gritty? Or do you want to be towards the beginning? At KPMG, you can do a little bit of both. You can be part of the whiteboarding, but then you could also see it through if you want to. A lot of don't, and that goes into our consulting team, and then they take it and run with it from there if it's a true large transformation. But a lot of it comes up to you and what gets you excited.
I love it. I'm going to move to another question now, just to kind of keep things flowing. What are 2 to 3 skills candidates can develop to prepare for a strategy consulting career? Eddie, Precision, could you weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I just think it aligns fairly well with the previous question as well. I mean, we always distill this down to kind of a little kitschy phrase of fit, it, and grit. So if you've got those 3 things, then typically that can kind of preclude success or portend success in a strategy consulting career. So fit, obviously, can you play well in a team? Everything that we do is team oriented. You're working on team projects. Very rarely are you ever working in a individual project. So along with playing as a good team member, are you coachable? Are you willing to be flexible with your ideas? You're going to be dealing with people from diverse backgrounds and personalities, so you're never going to have sort of your way is always the way that's going to be assumed. You're going to have to kind of be negotiating in the marketplace of ideas here with your team members. So dealing with that both from an upward standpoint, downward standpoint, you got to be able to play well in a team. So that's from a fit standpoint. The other, kind of kitschy thing you'll probably hear from consulting is like, can you pass like the Pittsburgh airport test? I'm sure people have heard that in the past, but it's like the idea of like, are you just pleasant to be around? Because you're gonna be spending a lot of time around people, and can you actually, be someone who's just easy to work with from that standpoint? The it side, and that's more about like mode of thinking, kind of where we were just coming from. This idea of like, are you a problem solver? Can you quickly learn new concepts? Do you have that intellectual rigor that Palmer was mentioning? In our case, you're going to be moving from new products and therapeutic areas. You might be working in diabetes on one project, and at the same time, you're working on some obscure rare disease that only 20 people in the country have. So you have to be able to kind of flex upwards and downwards from that intellectual curiosity standpoint. It's also, again, very data-driven work. So you have to not only be steeped in the data, but also be able to zoom out and then see what are the qualitative ramifications of that information. What does that mean for our client? How do we translate that? They're paying us to solve these problems for them. So we have to distill it down to a wide range of audiences with different backgrounds, even at the client, to understand these things. So that communication of the piece is really, I think, a piece that pairs well with the thinking as well. If you you can be the best strategic thinker in the world, but if you can't communicate it to your client, ultimately it's sort of the old adage of the tree falling in the woods. No one's ever going to make an impact with your recommendations if you can't translate it to the client effectively. Then the last thing was just grit. So this idea of like, are you mentally tough? I think people know that consulting is not a 9-to-5 job by any means. Can you take the long hours when the job commands it? We have a client deliverable the next day. Are you ready to kind of commit to that? You make sure you're communicating well with your teams to make sure you're getting those done. Are you handling constructive feedback well? These are all sort of critical pieces to playing well in a team again, and growing as a consultant. So these are the things you have to do. And ultimately, from my perspective, are you doing these things to build leverage for your teams? I mean, that's, I think, when anyone asks me internally, how do you, move forward and well and, pace well within a professional growth standpoint, it's all about leverage. If you're building leverage for your teams, then you're allowing the organization to scale up. And, ultimately you're becoming key cog of the profitability of the firm.
Love it. Eddie, I have two just quick follow-up questions for you for clarity. One, does somebody have to have experience like you did in, the kind of lab side or the really scientific side in order to succeed? Do they just have to have an interest in life sciences? And then question number two is just, can you clarify whether y'all are hiring?
Yeah. I'll take the hiring one first. Our 2024 cycle for the summer, that's already been closed, but the 2025 cycle should be opening up, I think, in late summer. So it would be keep an eye out for that. In terms of the past experience, by no means do you have to have a past experience in that. We hire a mix of PhDs, MBAs, straight out of undergrad, even from non-science degrees. A lot of masters of public health is another kind of experience. So like they're kind of tangential spaces to healthcare, but I think it speaks to just this idea, like you said, Jenny Ray, of interest in this space, interest in the healthcare market, interest in, honestly though, even in that, those are all still nice to have. If you're a strong problem solver and you want to work in a space like this, and you have that kind of just general interest in healthcare, we're kind of confident we can kind of teach you, if you've got those underlying skills, teach you what you need to know to be a successful market access consultant.
Love it. Awesome. Kim at Advancy, let's go to you now. What are 2 to 3 skills candidates can use to, or that you would like to have them kind of work on or prep or kind of be brushed up on to demonstrate either in the interview or early on the job?
Sure. I think we covered a lot of different qualities a consultant can have already, but maybe I'll talk about my experience and the people I have in my team that I can see are really, really successful. I'll say what they all have in common is really their curiosity. So strategy consulting, it's different from other type of consulting because you'll do projects that are typically shorter. So in a year, you'll do maybe 10 to 12 different projects. And that is really a big difference because you need to be curious for all of those projects. There are going to be very different topics. Each time you need to really want to dig inside a topic and really go deep into your understanding of one particular project. And I think that's really how I can differentiate the consultants that are going to be good to the ones that are going to be really exceptional, is that you don't need to only identify, oh, okay, this company is not profitable. Maybe it's because of the price. Okay, but what type of product do they need to, work on? And once you identify the product, you say, oh, but can they do it? And if they cannot do it, why can't they do it? Is it because there is a different, too much competition, or they're not able to market the product the right way? So you really need to always go to the next level and try to understand what is going on. Really, it's like a detective work. And I feel like the candidates that are able to do that and show that this curiosity also during the recruitment process is really what makes them stand out for me. And I see also just a quick question on the messaging thing. Someone Amy asking me what's the best way to connect for the recruitment team. Really just to directly apply on the website. And also you can connect with people on LinkedIn if you want to have a quick chat before your interview.
That's awesome. Thanks, Kim. And y'all are hiring now. I think you already mentioned that, right? But just to confirm.
Hiring a lot.
Okay, great. See, I just love hearing this because I don't know how many emails we get a day. I would say it's upwards of 20 with people that are like, well, since no one's hiring, what should I do? And so we are working to translate the demand that y'all are seeing in the marketplace for something else. So I want to press into that just really quickly to move back into like how are you navigating what I would call not downward economic times, but just uncertain economic economic times with your clients. How are you helping them? And if each of you could just say, here's one thing that our clients are coming to us about, maybe not every client, but just one thing that your clients are coming to us about. Anybody who wants to jump in on this one, we'll move into our open questions now. I have 2 open questions before we'll close. So this is the first one. What are you helping your clients navigate and answer strategically right now?
I'm happy to jump in. This is one of those environments, right, where uncertainty needs advice, right? And so it's fantastic for, I think, strategy work. One thing that we're doing is really thinking about the big investment choices organizations are considering making and trying to think about, does that investment choice still make sense if the world evolves to path A or path B? Because often we get scared of disruption, right? We're like, everything's changing around us. We're not sure what to do. And we stop investing. And that actually leaves organizations weaker. What we're trying to do is make sure people can have confidence to proceed with investments that are going to make sense no matter what happens.
Love it. Very clear and also incredibly insightful. Anyone else?
I know at Altman Solon, at least, we're doing a lot of work in the Gen AI space right now. And I think probably true for anyone who touches those industries. A lot of companies looking for guidance about how to plan for the future in that context.
Gorgeous. Thanks, Louisa.
Maybe a very specific example from OC&C of what we're seeing in one particular industry. I do a lot of work in the world of consumer digital media, think dating apps, online marketplaces, social media. All of these businesses did incredibly well during COVID when all of us were trapped inside our homes, and then suddenly we were released outdoors again, and membership and usage suddenly plummeted. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing over the past year has been trying to disaggregate, how much of that plummet is normalization, how much of it is actually unpicking, are there fundamental things wrong with the platform underneath, and when is it that we expect to see an inflection point where suddenly it will return to growth, albeit probably not quite as exciting as the growth we saw in 2020. So it's really unpicking what's happened in the past and then trying to forecast what it is you expect will happen in the future.
Love it.
I would also just add, this may be a pharmaceutical specific instance, but not only are we dealing with sort of economic pressures on pharmaceutical companies, but then are also obviously facing a lot of regulatory pressures. For those of you who might be familiar with like the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of sort of questions, ambiguity. If you go to any kind of trade conference in our space, you're going to see some sort of session that's based on trying to declutter what the IRA means for a lot of our pharmaceutical clients. So definitely raises a lot of question, and to Paul's point, when there's a lot of questions or uncertainty, it increases the importance of relying on folks like ourselves to help guide our clients and answer those questions for them.
Eddie, just to press in on that one more time. Oh, and maybe somebody else can weigh in on this. The importance is high. Yeah, Stephen, maybe you can answer this one. Importance is high. Do clients understand it? Do they get that they need to invest right now?
Sorry, I was going to respond more to. I was going to expand upon Eddie's point, but
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Expand upon it, but I also do want to answer your questions anyway. So, can you just clarify? So you're asking, do clients understand that they also need to invest in anything particular, or just kind of to continue?
Well, because like Paul said, right? Sometimes you stop investing, not just in business, but also in consulting services, right? So do clients get that they're at this strategic inflection point? Please expand on what Eddie said as well. But I just wanted to press into that and make sure that we're translating it right by saying they need it, but they're also purchasing it, right? They're also leaning in to purchase those services.
Yeah, exactly. So the brief thing I was just going to expand upon Eddie's point is, which he made a very good one with regards to a lot of the increasing regulatory pressure, and he talked about the U.S. specifically. I wanted to expand that a little bit. We also see that quite a bit globally and need to advise on that. There's a whole situation in Europe right now where they're fundamentally changing how they evaluate drugs, for example, and what they value and whether or not, and what they're willing to pay for, what they're willing to not or not willing to pay for, and that fundamentally changes now how a manufacturer develops their product, how they dictate the launch strategy for it, et cetera. So that was the only piece I was going to expand upon there. In terms of your question, Jenny Ray, on investing, I'll try to answer as best I can. I think there are obviously definitely companies that recognize that, in order to grow, that there needs to be some level of investment. And some industries I think we see are actually very good about that and actually know that. I think actually the pharmaceutical and the healthcare more broadly really recognizes that, especially because their development pathways are so long. So if they don't continue investing now, then they're going to get somewhere 5, 6, 7 years down the road where they don't have anything. So they do recognize that they need to invest, and they need to make the right decisions now in terms of what they develop. Otherwise, they're going to get to a product that isn't worth anything. And so a lot of times we actually will have conversations with our client. In fact, a partner colleague of mine actually wrote a Simon-Kucher book all about monetizing. It's called Monetizing Innovation, but basically the whole point of it is to say that when you're actually investing, that is the time to actually to examine the strategy and the plan for the product at launch. It makes no sense to develop a product and then send it out to the market and hope things work, because oftentimes that's a recipe for failure. And there are many products that have just been developed assuming there will be a market for it, and then when they actually come out, there is no market, and they've just wasted all that time and money.
Very good. Last call to weigh in on the overall question. Okay. Well, just with the remaining time that we have left, gosh, I feel like we could continue this for a whole other hour. Thank you to all of our panelists for the great and insightful questions. I'd love to move to our closing question now. If you could, at the end, just kind of share, we've already covered a little bit of the opportunity, just one thing that you love about the work that you do, and then any of the hot takes that you haven't mentioned yet. If you were a candidate in this space today, where would you look? What would you emphasize? What would be the one thing that you would spend your time or energy on? So we'll go in the reverse alphabetical order this time. So strategy and Paul, I'll start with you.
I just actually probably want to use this time to thank everybody and encourage you to, go find the path that makes sense for you. We're all kind of chasing a dream, and strategy consulting is awesome. I mean, for me, to that question, there is a great rush of learning that I'm always on. Like there's always a new field, there's always a new sector, but there's a lot of amazing jobs out there. So really think through what is going to make sense for your personality, and what's the secret sauce you're going to add to consulting or to strategy consulting. And I think you want to have an answer to that question, or an answer to the question that might make sense for another field. So good luck to everyone.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, Stephen.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of pieces I love about it, I mean, I think this often varies by the project. I try to generally find some element within each project that I particularly enjoy, whether that's the mentorship that I'm providing a particular team on, whether it's learning a new space entirely, whether it's doing something that I know that whatever we recommend is actually going to have a significant impact on our client's business. It's usually some mix of those different factors that gets me excited about any particular project. As to the hot take related to, I thought Paul gave really good advice there, and I would really re-emphasize that with everyone. The other piece that I would add to that, and this is also related a bit to what Eddie mentioned earlier about fit, is I really always encourage candidates that when you're going through the interview process, I think it's just as important for you to interview the interviewer, so to speak, as it is for you to be interviewed. And what I mean by that is that consulting is very much a people business. And it's really important that wherever you go, assuming you want to go into strategy consulting, that you feel like you're going to enjoy working with the individuals, or that that you speak to during the interview process. Because if you really do not feel any sort of connection with them, that is probably not going to be a firm that you're going to be enjoying working at, regardless of what offer you get from a salary perspective, benefit perspective, et cetera. I mean, ultimately, we spend a lot of time in our work, and if we don't enjoy the people we're working with, it can actually be quite a not fun experience.
Never a truer word was spoken. Thanks, Stephen. Eddie, Precision.
Yeah, it's actually a good segue from Stephen's point, because I think the thing I have enjoyed the most through my time in consulting is really just the people and the collaboration. I think I mentioned earlier, like I was looking for any reason to get out of working in a lab by myself on my PhD projects. Consulting was that kind of route out. And I haven't really looked back since, but I mean, really that kind of mentorship piece and seeing people come in very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and growing through the process and like learning about a space that they've never learned before, knew anything about before, and then being experts and talking to senior members of a client team by the end of the project and keeping up with them is a really rewarding experience. So I would say that that's kind of my favorite part about this process. But the hot take, I would say, is maybe something a little bit more tactical, since I think Paul and Stephen did a good job kind of thinking more kind of conceptually and kind of like what your kind of goals and objectives are with this career. But treat the interview process as, you know, a reflection. It seems simple, but treat the interview process as a reflection of how you might be when you're ultimately there at that job. If you are, you know, clear and concise in your communication, if you're, you know, showing kind of strong examples and details and making kind of pithy points, and you're organized in your thinking, all of these things will portend that's likely how you're going to operate to some degree once you're, you know, potentially in that position at that job. So I think that's sort of a kind of a secret, you know, unwritten rule of what I'm looking for when I'm interviewing someone is like, is this person aware of sort of the story that they're telling and the, you know, the image that they're portraying out to the person that's being interviewed.
Love it. Thanks, Eddie. Thanks also for your perspective. Naomi, OCNC.
You'd think I'd learn how to manage the mute button after like 4 years of living on Zoom, but no. I completely agree with
everything. There's always growth areas, right?
Exactly. Always room to improve. I completely agree with everything that has been said by my fellow panelists in the last few minutes to this question. I think for me, the three things that I enjoy most about this job are, it's genuinely just very intellectually stimulating. It is interesting. I'm essentially solving a puzzle each day, and who doesn't love puzzles, you know? But it's a puzzle that you get to solve in a very collaborative way. I am a social animal. I don't do well working alone, and so I love the fact that I get to work with a really close-knit team, and I feel like it makes the ideas that we come to so much better, because you are really stress testing and building things together. And then the third thing that I really enjoy is the social experience that I've had here. You know, I alluded to it at the beginning. I like my colleagues. I like spending time with them. I've made some very good friends here. And, you know, they treat you pretty nicely. You get a lot of free food. We went to Aruba a few weeks ago for an away weekend. You know, life isn't terrible. In terms of my hot take on how it is that you should be thinking about, you know, whether you want to be a strategy consultant, I completely agree with everything that the people have said around. Make sure you take the opportunity to interview the people interviewing you. Obviously, it's a competitive job market, but at the end of the day, if you're a great candidate, then you will have choices. And I hope that you do choose to come to strategy consulting, but make sure that you do think about the implications in terms of the level of travel involved, the you know, fast-paced nature of the environment, the type of commitment that it takes. It's, for me, something that's been absolutely fantastic, but make sure that you really kind of consider it from what's best for you. And ultimately, that's what matters most.
Thanks, Naomi. Thank you so much. KPMG Palmer, you said 17 years, I think, at the beginning, right?
18, but close.
18, yeah.
years, yes.
So there's got to be something good going on in the water.
Oh, yes. I mean, I can't remember it might have been Eddie who said this earlier. I think it's when you're interview them back. You will find happiness if you enjoy who you work with, regardless really what you're doing. This is interesting, creative work across consulting. It's going to be challenging, but that's a good thing. You're going to work with some really, really smart people. So I'll now pivot to more what you need to know what you're bringing to the table and where you would fit into the organization. You also need to learn, how do they make money? Like how do they win? What is their special sauce? And you can ask that through networking events and various things before you get to the interview. I would also recommend expanding who you interview with from company's perspective within the consulting as a whole to get to that strategy consulting, because it might surprise you that you might find something that you like even more, or it might solidify that you want to do strategy consulting. The additional prep work that you're going to do in the cases and the various situational questions will only make you do a better job in a competitive environment to get into strategy consulting.
I love it. Thank you so much. Louisa Altman-Solon, you went back after business school.
I did, yes. The firm actually sponsored business school, so it was a easy decision to come back. I think there are two things that I love about my job that are sort of in line with what everybody else has said, like intellectually super interesting, great opportunities for career progression. And I love working somewhere where there's very clear expectations, and when you meet them, you will be promoted. I love the sort of challenge that comes with, as soon as you get comfortable in a role, there's a new one and you're taking on new responsibilities, and that's its own challenge. I think that's what keeps things interesting. And then I just love working with the people here. My team is here in LA this week, and we went out to dinner last night, and that was really nice to get to spend some time together, not focused on work. Last week we were in Virginia at a client site, and someone on my team, her uncle just opened a new Korean restaurant like a week ago, and so we all went and checked it out together. That was really fun as well. So love working with the people, love making those connections. Similarly, been to a lot of weddings and made really good friends from this job. I don't know that this is a hot take, but I think one thing that hasn't come up as much is sort of what to prioritize in the interview process. And at least at Altman-Solon, there's really two hurdles that are pretty much entirely separate from each other. The first is getting the interview, which is where networking comes in, making sure that you're sort of like a presence, your resume is really cleaned up, highlighting the right things. Like that's one thing. Once you get the interview, at least at Altman-Solon, like that sort of stops being a factor, and you are evaluated pretty much only on your interview performance, largely on your case performance. And so I would say, if you're thinking about consulting interviews, you should put the time in on case prep and control all the things that you can control. Like I downloaded an app. I mean, this was a while ago now, but I think it was called King of Math. Like make sure that, you're not stressed about doing the mental math. You're not going to drop zeros. Like you can control that. You can feel totally confident about it and focus on the harder parts of the case interview. And so I think, putting the time in and really taking it seriously is a key for getting into these roles.
Amazing. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Kim Advancy.
Sure. So what do I really like about my job? I think three main things really. First, I already said it, I really never stop learning. As I was saying, it's 12 engagement per year, 12 different business cases, and I've been there 6 years and I'm not bored yet. So that's a pretty good sign. Second, and this is really, I think, particular to Advancy, is the way we work. So very, very early on, you'll be managing a stream. We won't do 3 months training to candidate engineer consultant. For us, the best way to learn is to do. So very early on, after 2 weeks, you'll be in a project with me or another manager, start working, given a stream with supervision, but you'll be really part of the team, part of all the discussions with me, the partner, and the client. We don't have a particular framework for promotion, and I think that's also very particular to Advanced. If you're really good and motivated, you won't have to wait 2 years from junior consultant to consultant, etc. You can be promoted in 6 months if we feel that you're at the right place. And lastly, this is all what made me love consulting, but really what made me stay at Advanced particularly is really the unique atmosphere, especially in the New York office since I moved here. It's really a mix between established boutique consultancy and a startup, actually. As I was saying, we opened 4 years ago in New York, right before COVID. When I arrived, we were 4 people in a very small WeWork office. Now we've been growing from this small office to a bigger office to a bigger office to now having our own address in New York. We're going to be 40 by the end of the year. And that's really particular to Advanced, this atmosphere and having this environment for you to learn and grow properly. That's in the DNA of the company.
Love it. Well, if you take one thing away from today, please know that breaking into strategy consulting with these firms, any of you would probably be super honored to work with any one of these firms. These are doing the best work in the business, high level, high training, and also, as you heard probably by reading between the lines today, an incredible level of support for their people. So thank you all for joining and sharing the work that you do, the love that you have for your work, and also the opportunities that exist in the space. For any of the firms that are here today, both our panelists and others, we do publish an application deadlines list. If your firm is not currently represented on there, but you have either an early deadline, which is kind of the first deadline for your undergrad hiring, or for MBA hiring, or a kind of batch deadline that you want us to publish, we do that for free. Please send it over. We're happy to share that with the broader audience, the millions of people that read our website at Management Consulted. In addition, if any of you, I just felt like there was one thing that nobody said, because it's kind of not necessarily cool to talk about it, but one of the reasons that you should think about strategy consulting is that it pays really well inside the consulting ecosystem. It's a really good payer. And we have believed in pay transparency as long as anybody. For 15 years. We've been publishing pay reports inside the space for free. So if you haven't checked out our salary report, you can check out a lot of the firms that were on here today and confirm that what I'm saying is true. So if there's no other reason other than the passion and the love and the excitement for the people, other than like your time is worth something and you could make a lot of money doing this as well, that's at least a good incentive to think about getting started. We'd love to be a part of your process, candidates, firms, universities, as we help support people inside this ever-evolving ecosystem. And we'll be back with another panel in just 2 months. So we look forward to being back with you again. Thank you again to all of our panelists. We really appreciate you. Thank you to everyone else who joined, and good luck, everyone.
I hope you got a lot out of this panel, as I did. Hope you enjoyed it. We've got a lot of amazing events coming up this summer like this, so we do regular panels, regular firm conversations. Check out upcoming events, link in this episode's show notes. Again, there's also a link where you can connect with the firms, connect with Management Consulted, what we've got going on here, look into Black Belt, look into resume edits. Got a lot of good stuff for your consulting prep process. All right, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.